What's going on? This is Ryan with Automatic Comics, and up next we are going to talk about the top 10 surprising sales I saw last week. Stay tuned. Alright, so before we get started, please remember to hit that like button and hit the subscribe button if you'd like to see more content like this. If you're not familiar with this video, what I do is I go over the top 10 surprising sales that I saw in the weekly Heritage comic auction. And so I watch that auction every week. I track a bunch of books, usually about 200 plus books per week, a bunch of different keys, and I look at what I think the value of that book is right now, what the high sales were, what the high sale is for that book, and then I look at what the surprising sales were on the high end and the low end. So I don't just do the high sales, I look at 5 sales that surprised me on the high side and 5 sales that surprised me on the low side. So you can see that, yeah, there are big sales out there, there are also discounts out there, and so it might also help you see what books might be trending up, what books might be trending down. So with that, let's get into that first sale. All right, now number 10, and this one is actually on the wall back here. This is a high sale. It was House of Secrets number 92 with a CGC 3.0 that sold for $1,020. Now, this wasn't a record sale, but this was a big sale for this book. This is the first appearance of Swamp Thing. It's one of my favorite covers. Love this cover, and I don't know what it is. There's just something about it. It kind of has this really unique look to it. I've mentioned it before. It's almost like you're looking through a staticky old TV screen, and that's kind of the feel it has to it, which I just think is really unique, really like it. And this one has quite a few fans out there. It's a pretty niche book, but a lot of people that really do like that book. So it's in demand, and it has been climbing over the last year like everything else. Now, I had estimated the price of this book at $850. This was 20% above that estimate. The record was actually $1,077 from all the way back in March. But this is another one of those where you can see that you've got prices that peaked earlier this year. You got some big sales earlier this year, and then they started dropping off over the summer. And we're seeing sales come up and reach those prior highs again, or get around those prior highs again. So this one was only 5% off from that record. So I think that's a big sale, especially since there's not a lot of speculation or anything around this character. It's just a popular character. And the only thing you could maybe see with some speculation with this book is with HBO Max, if they end up doing that Justice League Dark show that's been rumored for a while, and if they ended up ultimately using Swamp Thing as one of those characters. But there's no confirmation of that or anything. The only thing that really ever happened with Swamp Thing was that one season that they gave that character on the now defunct DC channel, streaming channel, which got a lot of positive reviews, but it seems like it was a very expensive show to film, and I think that's what ultimately ended it. Now, this is an expensive book in just about any grade. This was a 3.0, and this is around $1,000 just for a 3.0. So you're going to be paying near $1,000 for almost any grade. So one good alternative is to go for that first solo series. So there are actually 2 solo series that happened in the 70s, so go for the earlier one. That's my recommendation. It's from 1972, so it's just the series called Swamp Thing, issue number 1. An 8.0 sold for $250 on December 2nd, so this is something where for about a few $100s you can get a pretty nice presenting copy of that book. Lower mid-grade copies are around $100, whereas with House of Secrets, like I said, you're going to be spending around $1,000 regardless. So if you like that character but don't want to drop, a grand, that is a good alternative. And if they do end up doing something with that character with HBO, with DC, then that's always a possibility that you could see some additional increases in the price of that book. All right, now number 9, and this was a low sale. It's about time for this one. I've had some people wondering when are we going to see the prices in this book drop. This is Tomb of Dracula number 10 with a CGC 8.5 selling for $2,640. Now, it's still a lot of money, but it is down quite a bit from where it had peaked earlier this year. Because, like I said, it was just maybe about a month or 2 ago, somebody that commented on my channel had said that they really wanted this book, but they're never seeing the prices come down on it. And so obviously it's something where you have to watch a lot of sales, but I am starting to see this book trend down again. It's still clearly very expensive, but you do have opportunities out there to pick these books up below fair market value. Now, sometimes it can take a while to come across those, but this time of year right now, where we're around Christmas, that is a great time to find deals, especially on auctions. I mentioned this on my channel. I mentioned this when I was on Newbie's channel, I think earlier this week. And so that's something where when people are really focused on the holidays, buying Christmas presents, all that kind of thing, you can find deals if you're watching auctions. So definitely the time of year to look for that. Now, I had estimated the price of this book at $3,300. This was 20% below my estimate. High sale was $3,900 from July 5th. So this is down 32% from that peak. So that's one of those things where I think this one is really interesting to see the prices come down on this book, to be down that 30% that I talk about a lot from those highs, because this was a character that had a off-screen cameo at the end of Eternals. And I almost feel like if that movie had performed better, maybe this book would be continuing to spike more, but maybe the fact that it was in the Eternals, it's taking it down as well, because there's just mixed reviews on that movie. But this is a character that we clearly know that they're planning on introducing further. They've got that character technically in a movie now again. And so if you can find that book at discounts, see it coming down before they ultimately really introduce the character in their own solo movie and whatever else they plan on doing with Blade, that is, I think, a great book to pick up if you've got the money to do it. I mean, it's a pretty expensive book, you can see, in all grades. Again, another book that it's tough to get below $1,000 on. But if you want a good alternative with this one, I would go with Tomb of Dracula number 13. This is the origin of Blade. It's only a few issues later, and it is much, much less expensive. That same 8.5 sold for $400 on December 7th. So this is something where for a fifth or a sixth of the cost for the same grade, nice looking book, this is something where you can get a book that will likely increase in price in a similar fashion, similar percent, when we ultimately get that character on screen. All right, now number 8, and this is a high sale. This is Batman number 62. So we're jumping into the golden age with a CGC 2.5 that sold for a record $1,104. Now, I love this cover. I think it's just such a fun cover with Catwoman on the front. I think it looks so funny where it always looks like she's like throwing cats at Batman and Robin. It always reminds me of the crazy cat lady from The Simpsons, just like chucking cats at people. And so I enjoy this one. It's also the origin of Catwoman and the first time that you learn her name is Selina Kyle. So I think it's a cool book. It's kind of a key there with this book, but also just a great fun cover. Now, I had estimated the price of this book at $900. This was 23% above my estimate. The prior record was $720 from just August of this year. So this is one of those golden age books, a Batman, I'll call it a key book that has been continuing to move up this year. So this was a new record by 53% in just 4 months. And part of the reason that I had estimated the price a little bit higher than that was that there was a 2.0 that sold for $1,000 in June. And so it seemed like maybe that one had overshot some, but clearly not, because now we've got this 2.5 selling for $1,100. Now, early golden age Batman books, especially Catwoman covers, are not something that it's easy to find cheap alternatives. They are generally going to be pretty expensive. But another one that has a very comparable price that it's actually surprising to me that it's selling for about the same is Batman number 42. And so this is the first time that you actually have Catwoman on the cover in the Batman series, and the second time overall that she appears on a cover. And so I think this is a great book to get. If you're going to be spending that amount of money, I'd be trying to find a copy of that. Again, it's Golden Age Batman. It's not like these are books that are all over the place that you can just go out and find anytime you want them. But if you're keeping an eye out for Batman key books, Catwoman books, that's one that I'd be looking for. So for example, that same 2.5 sold for $825 on December 5th. So I think that was probably a steal considering it was less than Batman 62, but that's a book definitely one that I really like. I do have a low-grade copy of it, and one that I would be looking for if you're interested in early Batman keys. All right, now number 7. This is a low sale, and we're going into Amazing Spider-Man. This is Amazing Spider-Man number 129 with a CGC 7.0 that sold for $1,860. Again, this is a book that doesn't really need a lot of introductions. First appearance of the Punisher, one of the most in-demand, coolest Bronze Age covers that is out there. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if the rumors are true that Disney is planning on bringing that character back, whether it's in the Marvel Cinematic Universe or the Disney Plus type universe. But it's a character that I feel like they're going to be printing money with that character. I mean, he's an extremely popular character. You could go down some different pathways with Disney where you're getting into kind of that darker, grittier storyline. And so that's something I could definitely see Marvel reintroducing, probably even pulling the character that was used in the Netflix series, because that seemed to be a very well-received version of that character. And so if you can find deals on books like this, major keys, if you can see discounts in price from prior highs, definitely the type of book that I would be trying to pick up right now. Now, I had estimated the price of this book at $2,400. This was 23% below my estimate, and the record was $2,995 from July 7th. So this is a 38% drop from that peak. And so, again, this is one of those things where those deals are out there. You can find them. You've just got to have some patience and watch a lot of sales, and eventually you will come across situations like this where you can pick this book up for a pretty good discount. Now, the other reason why I think this was probably just a steal for this book, there was a sale just a couple days later on eBay that I have confirmed was real for $2,750 for a 7.0. And so we had this book sell for $1,860, and then just a few days later sell for almost 50% more. And so that's the thing where with big keys like this, you've got to jump at those opportunities to pick them up at a discount. Now, for alternatives for this book, a great alternative is his second full appearance in Amazing Spider-Man number 135. He's also on the cover. It's a cool cover with a bunch of different characters on there, and I am honestly surprised how cheap this book usually comes as, because it's, again, I know those second appearances, they usually go for about 10 times less, and that's the same here. A 7.0 is about a $200 book right now. And to me, that just seems like a total steal for that book. And if we do ultimately see that character show up, I'd see that book moving up just as much in terms of percent as the first appearance. All right, now number 6, and this was a high sale, and this was one that I was watching closely because I recently picked up a copy of this book. This is Eerie number 1 with a CGC 5.5 that sold for $2,040. This was a record in this grade. Now, like I said, I was very excited about seeing that come up for sale because this is my copy that I have. And I mean, the reality is I actually think mine presents better than that book. But I grade mine as more like a 4.5 or a 5 because there's a fair amount of damage along the spine. But the main cover presentation is super nice for this book. So this is one that I picked up a little bit ago. You may have seen it in an unboxing that I did, but I was very happy to see that sale of that book. And like I said, I was really watching it because when I bought that, it's a tough book to price. It doesn't sell very often, and I think I paid right around $1,000 for it. So I didn't know how much risk I was really taking on when I was picking it up. But I just thought Eerie number 1 was a really cool book to pick up. So, but it's a creepy, cool cover. You've got that kind of like a vampire type guy, just a creepy villain on the front. He's got multiple women trapped in these canisters. The one woman that's on there that looks like she's trying to get out, she does escape in the story, but you can tell the woman in the back looks like she's already gone. So she wasn't so lucky. But I had estimated the price of this book at $1,500. This was 36% above that estimate. The prior record was $1,599 from April 12th. So this beat that prior record by 25%. And again, it's a tough book to price because it only comes up for sale a couple times a year. But that demand that I've been seeing, that I've been talking about in Golden Age, especially pre-code horror, key pre-code horror covers like issue number 1s like this, definitely been seeing big jumps in prices in those books that have continued being strong throughout this year, even as other books seem to be dropping off some. Now, for Eerie, there are quite a few books in that run. There are a lot of cool covers, and they don't all cost as much as this one. There are some others that are actually a little bit more expensive, but I would recommend going to a site like Cover Price. We've talked about them before, where they've got pictures of all the different covers, or you can, if you happen to have a copy of one of these books, these Gerber photojournals, and go check out the covers that are there, and maybe there's one that you think is cool that you'd like to try to pick up. Again, they're not books that come up for sale all that often, so you've got to keep your eyes open, watch either eBay or lots of different auction sites, that kind of thing. But a couple really cool covers, just for reference. One is Eerie number 9. It's just an awesome kind of like skeleton ghost type cover. And then you've got Eerie number 13, which is just a multiple skull cover. And the thing that I thought was pretty funny with that is that if you look at issue 9 and then issue 13, it's got the exact same woman drawn on the front of the cover. And so it's like they're trying to save some money or something, on the art for that one. But there are some cool covers in this run. Definitely recommend checking those out. All right, now number 5, and this is a high sale, going way more modern on this one. This is Invincible number 1 with a CGC 9.6 that sold for $1,440. This has been one of the hottest books this year. I mean, still, this is a low sale, but this is still a big sale compared to where this book was selling about 2 years ago. And the cartoon I thought was great. I loved it. It is definitely not for kids, super violent, and it stays really pretty true to the comic book. So I was really happy with that, and I'm looking forward to the additional seasons that it sounds like we're going to be getting with that show. Now, this was also an example of a book where I've talked about with movies, you saw usually prices will peak at that first trailer. But with shows, if the show is well received, you will continue to see prices climb throughout the show, and that is what happened with that book. Now, we are quite a few months after that show now, and so we've seen prices trail off some with it, but I think that is a good time to pick them up if you can find them at a deal before that season 2 comes out. Now, this is the same thing that you would have seen with The Walking Dead, where you would see prices on Walking Dead number 1 spike when the show was out, when people are watching the show, interested in the show, and then when it was in the off season, you'd see the prices fall down again. And you could pick them up cheaper, you could sell them again when that show came out. And I imagine it'll be something similar with this. Now, I had estimated the price of this book at $1,900. This was 24% below my estimate. The record was actually $2,500 on June 7th. So this is 42% down from that record. But if you watch this book, it sells all over the place whenever it comes up for sale. And I think a big reason for that is if you see this one sell on auction versus fixed price, you get some pretty big price swings. And so in the last about 2 months, these are some of the sales that I've seen for that book. 1,242, 2,100, 1,800, 1,440, 1,305, and then just on December 12th, a $2,050 sale. So it is definitely one of those books where if you have just a little patience, you don't even need that much patience because it's a book that seems to sell pretty often. If you look for an auction, you can pick it up for pretty cheap, and then if you wanted, you could try to sell it fixed price. It seems like you can get quite a bit higher number on those fixed price sales than the auctions. So, for example, this was a $745 swing just in 1 week. That's a 50% swing in 1 week from a $1,305 sale to a $2,050 sale. So just a pretty surprising price swings with that book in the 9th grade. Now, I would say it definitely appears to be trending down as we've gotten away from that season 1, and it probably will continue until we get to season 2. So just something to be aware of with that book. Now, for alternatives, because clearly this is a pretty expensive book, it's a relatively low print run for a modern book. And so what you could go for is still issue number 1, but the Larry's limited edition. It has the same cover, except it has that Larry's limited edition logo on the front. Costs about 10 times less. 9.6s had sales ranging from $155 to $464 over the last 2 months. and a 9/8 has sold for a range of around $400 to $260 just in the last couple weeks. So that is also another book that seems to have some pretty big price swings on it, but one that is a much cheaper alternative to that first print of issue number 1. All right, now number 4, and this is a high sale. This time it's Amazing Spider-Man with a high sale. This is Amazing Spider-Man number 2 with a CGC 5.0 restored that sold for $3,840. Now, this is one of the most desirable Spider-Man keys out there. I would say issues 1, 3, and 14 are probably above it. I'm not going to count Amazing Fantasy 15, but issue number 2, super early Spider-Man, the introduction of the Vulture, one of his big villains, and definitely one of the probably the most well-done villains in recent memory for Spider-Man. And this was an especially big sale, especially for a restored book. Now, this is a good type of restored, I'll say good type of restored for one where you may want to try to have that restoration removed. This was a small amount of color touch. It was a C1, which means that is going to either have to be completely scraped off, or it's going to damage some of the cover, or cut out. But the impact on the grade, because it's a 5.0, depends on how much there really is on the cover, because a small amount can have some pretty wide ranges. You could have just some little touches of color on the spine or on a corner or an edge. But I've also seen a C1 where someone's touched up an entire subscription crease. And so when that gets removed, it's like a huge white line right down the middle. And that's going to have a much more negative impact on the grade than, say, one little tick that gets cleaned up on a spine. And so you do need to look at the book closely. I tried finding it by zooming in on the images and looking for where that color touch might be, looking for color breaks, but I didn't see anything that was obvious. There were definitely color breaking creases and spine ticks that were white on there. So it's not like somebody cleaned up everything. It's probably a pretty small amount, but something that I wouldn't be surprised if the person that bought this decided to go that route with it. Now, I had estimated the price of this book at $2,800. This was 37% above that estimate. A 5.0 Blue Label recently sold for $5,720, but it had been selling more in the $5,000 range, and a 4.5 had a sale. Its most recent sale in October was for $3,167. And so I feel like this is a pretty risky buy in terms of value, because you've got the 4.5 to the 5.0 that are selling in the range of where this was paid for in that restored grade. And you've got to crack that book out, you've got to have the restoration removed, and you've got to have it regraded. And so there's a lot of cost that goes in there, because it's an expensive book. It's going to cost a fair amount to get it graded. You've got to pay the price to have that restoration removed. If you're going to have it professionally removed, you could always risk doing it yourself, but I would probably recommend sending it to someone. And so you're probably going to end up with a 4.5 or lower, would be my guess. And so since that 4.5 last sale was $3,200, you're already down. So I do think this was a risky purchase. That's why this was a high sale. Now, for an alternative for this book, I think his second appearance in Amazing Spider-Man number 7 is just a great option. There are definitely a few more of them that are available out there than issue number 2, and he's on the cover, and it costs about 10 times less. We just had on December 12th a 5.0, so same grade, but in a Universal, sell for $630. It's been as high as $1,000 this year. I think its fair market value is probably around $750. So given that a 5.0 unrestored of his first appearance recently sold for $5,700, this one's selling for around $600 to $700. Again, you're in that range of 8 to 10 times less for that second appearance. All right, now number 3, we're gonna move to DC for this one. This is a low sale. This is Green Lantern number 7 with a CGC 3.5 that sold for $552. Now, this book has been on a tear over the last year. It's just been screaming up. One of the few DC books that's actually been doing that, and it's all because of the Green Lantern Corps show that is rumored, or even not so much rumored, is coming to HBO Max. Because this is the first appearance of Sinestro, and it is expected that he is going to be one of the characters in that show. Now, it isn't the best cover out there. Sinestro is not on the cover, which is unfortunate. His first cover appearance is a couple issues later in issue number 9, but I had estimated the price of this book at $750. This was 26% below my estimate. This book peaked at $773 on August 19th, and it's one of these books where if you're a Green Lantern fan, it's definitely a must-have book for your collection. He's really just the biggest villain for Hal Jordan, the most well-known villain for Hal Jordan. And so I would keep watching prices on this book to see if they continue to drop, because I would expect if we get that Green Lantern Corps show and he does appear in it, that you're going to see prices of this increase, because HBO, they do a good job with their shows. And so I would think that it is probably going to end up being a pretty popular show and maybe drive some more interest for this character. Now, for the alternative, I already mentioned the alternative that I would recommend for this book. Green Lantern number 9. It's his second appearance. It's his first cover appearance. It's this cool orange cover. Now, this one does not cost 10 times less. You are not going to get a 3.5 for $50. This one is definitely a little pricier in comparison. I don't know why that happens with this one. Maybe just because the first appearance isn't all that expensive, and because it's such an early book, you're just not going to get as much of a discount. In lower grades, you can probably get it in the $100 to $200 range. Mid grades, around $400 to $500. So it's not cheap. It's probably about half the price of the first appearance, but you are getting that first cover appearance, which is a nice bonus. It's a cool cover, and you get that second appearance along with it. All right, now number 2, this was the most surprising high sale that I saw. This was All Flash number 1 with a CGC 7.5 that sold for a monster record. This was $10,200. And I believe I saw that Alex the Comic Hoarder bought a copy of this book recently. I think he did an unboxing of one recently on his channel. So I expect he was probably pretty happy with seeing a big, high sale for this book. Now, this is the first solo Flash title. This is not the first appearance of the Flash or anything like that, but this is the first solo Flash title, so that is what makes this one especially important. It is an early Golden Age book from 1941. Now, for me, I'm not a huge fan of the Golden Age Flash, that version of the Flash, but I do still understand the importance of that character and the importance of this book. Now, I had estimated the price of this book at $5,500. This was 85% above that estimate. I'll tell you why I estimated it at that price. In 2020, a 7.5 sold for $5,270 and $5,880. A 7.0 in 2020 sold for $4,950. A 6.0 sold just a month ago on November 20th for $4,080. And so I thought $5,500 seemed like a very reasonable price. So this was a big, big sale for this book. Now the record, and this is one of those things where you can see that Golden Age books, they don't go up all the time. The record was actually $7,920 from 2004. And you can see that there have been recent sales just last year well below that, a couple $1,000s below that. And so it's one of those things that shows that this book was flat to down for just about 20 years. And so Golden Age books, there's no guarantee that they're going to continue some rise in value, that kind of thing. They have just been on a huge tear recently. And so something to always be aware of when you're talking about Golden Age, silver, that kind of thing, is that just because we're seeing Golden Age books go up a lot right now does not mean that that's what they've done historically forever. That is a relatively modern trend that we're seeing these big price jumps with Golden Age. Now, this is not a book that I'm going to have an alternative for. You can't really have an alternative for a book like this for a Golden Age number 1 for Flash. So let's say if you want this one, just got to save up a bunch of money or have something pretty serious for trade for somebody that has a copy and try to go pick up that book. All right, so number 1, this was the most surprising low sale that I saw this week. I actually got 2 copies of this book that sold. And I have talked about this book and related books a number of times. It just keeps showing up on here on low sales. This is Hulk number 180. And there was a CGC 6.5 that sold for $960 and a CGC 8.5 that sold for $1,920. And I feel like I really should start piling up this book because I keep seeing the prices on this book come down. I know they're going to introduce Wolverine. There is no question they'll introduce Wolverine. Just like I mentioned with Punisher, you've got certain characters that are just so popular, they're just going to be key money-making characters. When they do ultimately introduce those characters, just the demand again for those books is going to skyrocket. Now, For the 6.5, I had estimated the price at $1,450. This was 34% my estimate for the 6.5. For the 8.5, I had estimated the price at $2,500. This was 23% below my estimate for the 8.5. And so this book and Hulk 181, I think, are just two books to really watch right now, because, I mean, they are in so much demand. There's just a lot of demand for those books, and the prices have been coming down. And so I expect when we do ultimately get the X-Men and then that character, when you get Wolverine, that these books are going to go right back up and meet or exceed the prices that they hit earlier this year. So definitely the Hulk 180, 181 books that I am watching right now, looking to potentially upgrade my copy of 181 if I see one that goes for a price that I can, one, afford, and two, seems like a good discount, good price. That's definitely a book that I'm watching for. Now, there are also tons of alternatives for this book. It's clearly a very expensive book. Hulk 181 is a very expensive book. So you could go for Wolverine #1. The limited series is the one that I would probably go for, with the orange and red cover. Marvel Comics Presents #72. It's the Origin of Wolverine. I would definitely try to get something like a 9.8 with that one, or go for trying to pick up a raw copy, see if you can get a 9.8, because the 9.8s they're down a lot from where they were earlier this year, but still a little pricey. Or go for that second cameo, which is Hulk 182. It's basically like the reverse of Hulk 180, where he appears on the first page and he isn't in the rest of the book, whereas in 180 he isn't in the book until the very last page. And so Hulk 182 is also what I feel is a pretty affordable copy to have that early appearance of Wolverine. Now, for the demand side of things, for what people like to collect, I would definitely go for 180 or 181 if you can, but in reality, I think they are all great books to own for the character of Wolverine. Alright, so those are my top 10 surprising sales from the Heritage Weekly Comic Auction this week. I hope you enjoyed this video, maybe saw a couple books that you're not familiar with, and also just some fun big sales, some low sales. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, hit the subscribe button if you'd like to see more content like this. I've got more videos over here if you'd like to watch some of my other videos, and the subscription button right here if you'd like to subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next video.